Joining me now, NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is reporting from Buckingham Palace, and Tim Ewert is the former royal editor for ITV News. Tim, this isn't just a pretty display at Windsor Castle. This is the royal family asserting so-called soft power. So explain the importance of what we are seeing today.
Well, from a British point of view, this is extraordinarily significant. I mean, state visits are quite rare anyway, usually maybe a couple a year. No elected head of state has been invited back for a second state visit until today. So this really was Britain rolling out the red carpet, if you like, in the most impressive way it possibly can. The question, of course, really is that, you know, you've mentioned 1,300 soldiers and all the horses and so forth. Once all those military personnel and all those horses have gone back to their barracks and to their stables, is it going to make any difference? Will that show that has been put on for Donald Trump and has undoubtedly impressed him, but will it work? Will it persuade him to give Britain a better trade deal? Will it improve relations with him? Those are the big questions, and we won't really know the answer about that until tomorrow, in actual fact. But certainly, as far as the royal family is concerned, this is the full-on show. This is the best they can do.
The million-dollar questions there. Gabe, from all appearances, the president seems to be enjoying this. He's delighted to be there. We know that he has admiration for the royal family. He's expressed his admiration for the late Queen Elizabeth. What else are we expecting during this visit?
Yeah, certainly a lot of admiration for the late Queen Elizabeth, Ariel. And just a short time ago, he actually paid his respects to the late Queen at her tomb in Windsor Castle. But you hit on all the points: pomp, pageantry, and protests today. The president largely insulated from what's going on here in central London. But as you just saw right there, greeted this morning by Princess Kate and Prince William, and then King Charles and Queen Camilla. There was an inspection of troops. There was a spectacular flyover by the British Red Arrows. And then later on tonight, we are expecting that opulent white tie state banquet. About 160 people expected to attend, business executives, members of the Trump family. But as your guest mentioned, tomorrow, the president expected to meet with the prime minister at his country residence, and that is where the discussion is expected to turn to policy, not just President Trump's tariffs, but also the ongoing wars in Ukraine and Gaza before the president heads back to Washington later tomorrow. Ariel?
Of course, those very serious geopolitical issues underpinning all of the pomp and circumstance here. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much for reporting there from Buckingham Palace. And I want to bring in now NBC's Raf Sanchez in London. And Raf, as we mentioned, the location of this visit is at Windsor Castle, keeping Trump far away from scenes like the one where you are. Just describe what you're seeing, what you're hearing.
Yeah, Ariel. So President Trump at Windsor Castle, about 20 miles that way, doing the pomp, doing the pageantry. Here in central London, we've seen very large protests over the course of the day. The crowds are starting to thin out a little bit, but earlier we saw this just enormous march through the center of the city. They're now in front of the British Parliament. That, of course, is Big Ben up there. And people are out here for a diverse range of reasons. The group that put this protest together is called the Stop Trump Coalition. We've heard from people who are angry about the president's policy on Gaza, his policy on Ukraine, his approach to the environment. But the unifying message bringing all of these people out is that President Trump is not welcome in Britain. Now, what we have heard from people is that they understand the British government doesn't have a choice but to deal with the president of the United States, the world's most powerful person. But what they really, really object to is what they see as this kind of unnecessary rolling out of the red carpet for somebody who they say, you know, is in conflict with many of the key values in this country. It's also been notable, Ariel, just how many people have been holding signs to do with Jeffrey Epstein. If the president thought that he was leaving the Epstein scandal behind in Washington, D.C., he really had another thing coming. As you mentioned, large images of the president with the convicted sex offender from decades ago were projected onto the walls of Windsor Castle yesterday. today, and we've seen a lot of demonstrators here today holding signs related to Epstein. The British ambassador in Washington was actually fired last week after it emerged that he not only signs that birthday book, which the president is alleged to have signed, he denies having anything to do with it, but also had very extensive email correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein even after his first conviction for sexual offenses. So the Epstein scandal continuing to roil things on this side of the Atlantic also. The president, of course, not seeing this because his schedule is designed to keep him largely outside of London. But as on his first state visit back in 2019, we have been seeing large protests here in London at President Trump's arrival.
He may not be seeing it now, Raph, but we do know the president watches TV, and assuredly he will see them at some point. Thank you so much for your reporting. And Tim, King Charles is known for being a bit more outspoken than his mother, the Queen. How in the history of the monarchy have they played a role in shaping policy with foreign leaders? Specifically, we know that they had hosted President Trump during the Brexit situation. How is Prince Charles potentially going to, or King Charles, I should say at this point, going to shape Trump's thoughts when it comes to foreign policy, or trying to?
I don't think the king would expect to be able to shape the president's thoughts. What he can do is to present to the president what the government thinks is the most tempting face of Britain, if you like, all the pageantry that we've been talking about. I mean, Charles, in the past, before he became king, was known for being quite outspoken, and he got into trouble on one or two occasions for making comments about people that weren't felt to be appropriate. Things have changed a lot. He is now the king. He is incredibly cautious diplomatically. He's going to make a speech at the banquet this evening, followed by President Trump, and that speech will be really written for him practically by the government. So it's going to be a presentation of what the government wants to get across to the president. Now, what the president says in reply, of course, we don't know. It's very unpredictable. And what the president may say tomorrow in the press conference that we've been talking about is going to be very interesting. The questions that he's asked are going to be very interesting. And there won't be any diplomacy on display there, because the British media and, of course, the US media are going to have some tough questions for both Sir Keir Starmer and for President Trump. And we've heard already mention of Jeffrey Epstein. That's going to come up again because he's relevant to both of these men, the Prime Minister and the President. So whatever the king does is impressive in a sense that they're in the castle, they're surrounded by the panoply of royalty. It's very, very flattering for the president. But when it really gets down to it, I don't think the king can do a lot more than make the president feel welcome and to make him comfortable in those sort of surroundings. But the real nitty-gritty of this is going to happen when he goes one-on-one with the Prime Minister.